This is an AQA Psychology A Level revision video for the paper 1 topic of attachments, with a specific focus on the influence of early attachment on later relationships. So, having a look at what you will be expected to describe, apply and evaluate, it's that bottom bullet point on the specification, the influence of early attachment on childhood and adult relationships, including the role of an internal working model. So what you have here are two possibilities really. Essays or any exam style questions might just refer to the influence of early attachment on childhood or adult relationships, or they could reference the role of an internal working model and how that affects future relationships. So they pretty much mean the same thing, and the concept of the internal working model of course links to Bowlby's theory, and we can see it up here on the specification. So if you're not 100% confident on what an internal working model is and in the context of attachment, please go and watch the theories of attachment video on my channel. So the big picture here and why it is that we've got to examine these things is because attachment really affects relationships through an internal working model, according to Bowlby, and it was Bowlby's idea that linked attachment type to the quality of later relationships. In terms of the big picture and the specification, again, you'll need to be confident on the concept of an internal working model, but also the attachment types as identified by Ainsworth. So again, if that's something you're not confident on in terms of what the characteristics of a secure, insecure, avoidant and insecure attachment types are, please go and watch the Ainsworth video before continuing. So the internal working model, in summary, is the fact or the theory according to Bowlby is that the child's first relationship forms or acts as a mental representation of all future relationships. So it's like a mental template. And therefore the quality of the first attachment is crucial. If they've received a reliable caregiver, then they too will seek that same or similar relationship in the future. So there are 3 future relationship categories that we're going to explore, and the first one is relationships as parents. Now, again, if you've watched my theories of attachment video, you'll see one way we evaluated Bowlby was that there is research to support his concept of an internal working model, and the research by Bailey translates here as well, because this is of course evidence for the internal working model. So I'm just going to go over this briefly because I have gone through it in the theories of attachment video on the Bowlby section. So Bailey et al. Used 99 mothers and their 1-year-old babies, and they examined the attachment of these mothers to their own babies through observations, but then also interviewed these mothers about their attachment style with their own mother. So we've got 3 generations here. They assessed the mother-baby attachments using the strange situation developed by Ainsworth, and then, as I've said, interviews about their relationship with their own mother. And what was found was that there was a generational transmission of similar attachment styles, in that the majority of women had the same attachment classification in both cases, meaning the same attachment style they said in interviews that they had with their own mother was also apparent through the strange situation with their 1-year-old babies. Moving on to relationships in later childhood. So this piece of research was conducted by Smith in 1998. It's not necessary to know these researchers' names, but it can of course help you articulate your arguments better in essay questions. So Smith used questionnaires and they assessed attachment type and bullying in children aged 7 to 11 from a London primary school. What they found was that those children with secure attachments didn't have really any involvement in bullying, so they weren't bullies themselves and they were less likely to be victims. Insecure avoidant, however, were the most likely to be victims of bullying, and insecure resistant were most likely to be the bully. And then finally, the piece of research into romantic relationships was Hazen and Shaver's love quiz. And this is a useful piece of research, particularly when we move on to AO3 shortly. So they were asked which option best fits your romantic relationships as part 1 of the questionnaire. As you can see, there are 3 statements that they would choose from, A, B and C. So I'll let you read through those if you wish, but it's essentially just to establish what sort of attachment style these individuals have. And they also completed an adjective checklist for relationships with their parents. So you've got first half, which is about their actual romantic relationship currently, and then the second half about their describing their relationship with their parents and that attachment style there. What was found was a strong relationship, so this is correlational. There was a strong positive relationship between childhood attachment type and adult attachment type. With secure attachments, or type B attachments, you might know them as, having relationships that lasted on average twice as long as those classified as insecure. So that could be insecure avoidant or insecure resistant. So what you can see from here is that there is a very large sample size, and that it does provide evidence that romantic relationships are influenced by an internal working model. So moving on to evaluate these concepts now, I'm going to put some questions that form 3 PL paragraphs on the screen, and this is an opportunity to pause the video to see if you can apply these strengths or weaknesses before I talk through them in 5 seconds. Okay, so obviously correlational research is bad because it doesn't suggest cause and effect. And there's been some contradictory evidence that has found actually no relationship between attachment style as a child and attachment style in later relationships. So that could affect the validity of the theory. What you tend to find in all 3 pieces of research, so Bailey, Smith and Hazen and Shaver, is the use of self-reports. Now, there's some relevant weaknesses here in terms of social desirability bias and people not necessarily reporting the truth about their childhood relationships, which again goes on to affect the validity of the findings. But also this idea that you are asking people to recall detailed information about their childhood, from when they were sort of newborn to 2 years old, let's say at least, and then further on into their childhood of like 5 years old, and recall accurately their relationship with their parents. And that is highly unlikely because that is what we call retrospective data, which is in terms of we think back to the past and we think we've got a really accurate recall, but actually our recall isn't as accurate as we think it is. And there's no real way to check the validity of that data because it's in the past. Deterministic means that everything has a cause, all behaviour has a cause, and that we don't necessarily choose how to behave or choose how things affect us. And therefore, the idea of an internal working model and that your template, your relationship with your primary caregiver, your monotropic attachment will go on to affect your relationships for certain is highly deterministic. And so this can have a negative impact on the people that maybe have insecure attachments and are worried for what their relationships will be in later life, but also on parents trying to establish that secure attachment with their child because they don't want to affect their relationships in the child's later life. So other researchers have argued, actually, yeah, Bowlby is probably right, but it's more probabilistic, meaning that it increases the chances, but we're not doomed to have a bad relationship. So here you can see the evaluation points in more detail on the screen for you to make notes on, to get those sort of key terms down for each peel and any researchers' names that you might want to use to increase the effectiveness of your evaluation. But that concludes this video. Thank you for watching. I hope you found it useful.